Today on Exploring Scotland's History, we're just outside Spean Bridge at Highbridge, and we are meeting Paul Macdonald Armouries and West Highland Museum to learn of the action that happened as part of the 45 in this area. Starting at the Commando Monument at Spean Bridge, our group had only a mile to travel. Paul explained how the British forces would have been marching down from Fort Augustus, some nearly 25 miles north. Many of the men were Scottish themselves, recruited to the British Army with a promise of a decent wage in return for their often mercenary attitude in battle. 85 men marched under the command of Captain Scott. However, word of their imminent arrival had got to Lochaber before they had a chance, and Macdonald of 𝕾𝖈𝖔𝖍𝖇𝖗𝖎 rallied a dozen men and a piper to take them on. War was declared in effect, and the first shot was fired here at Highbridge on the 17th of August 1745, 3 days before the clans gathered at Glenfinnan. It was a perfect spot for an ambush. Our walk and the path the soldiers would have been taking from Fort Augustus did not reveal the bridge until the very last moment. The terrain ensured the Jacobites could stay hidden more easily too. When the first shot was fired, pandemonium for the British forces would have ensued, attempting to remove themselves, Captain Scott and his large white horse from the bridge, and looking for shelter in a rough and angular terrain. The effective guerrilla tactics from the Jacobites would have ensured the 85 British soldiers would have been convinced that the Jacobites were a much larger force in number. Captain Scott and his horse were wounded in the opening volley. He sent 2 soldiers over the bridge to negotiate. The Jacobites kept them, indicating negotiation was going to be off the table. Scott and his men had no option but to retreat. Paul shows us some musket balls he found while metal detecting on the bank behind us. Obviously, as the Jacobites were sending volleys of shots towards it, there was a chance there would be a concentration of them if they could be found. Scott and his men headed towards Glengarry, with Macdonald's men in pursuit at a safe distance. There they met a larger force of Jacobites and had to admit defeat. The British soldiers were patched up and looked after by Cameron of Lochaber, who was always very decent to his prisoners of war. They were also taken to Glenfinnan for the gathering and put on display. This was clearly an amazing morale boost at the beginning of the 45. Paul shows us the laborious task that loading a brown bess musket involves when the first shots would be fired. He's using a slightly younger reproduction than was used in the action at Highbridge. Paul explains that the cartridge is removed, the musket is half cocked and gunpowder is put into the flash pan. Then you shut the pan, the musket is now primed, pour gunpowder into the barrel, insert your musket ball, push in your wadding using a ramrod to keep everything together. This was usually done en masse with instructions from an officer in command. It's also worth mentioning Captain Scott's white horse was taken to Glenfinnan with the captured British soldiers, rode by 𝕾𝖈𝖔𝖍𝖇𝖗𝖎 himself and presented to the Prince as a war horse. The Prince used this horse at Prestonpans and right through to Culloden. It was rightly named 𝕾𝖈𝖔𝖍𝖇𝖗𝖎. Highbridge was a 𝕳𝖎𝖌𝖍𝖇𝖗 bridge built between 1735 and 1736, bridging a deep, steep gorge. It was in a perilous state in 1819, and Canmore suggests that it was repaired in around 1893, but eventually fell to the state we see it today in about 1913.
There's actually, down there, there's actually an old ruin down there. And the trigger guard, it's a musket trigger guard from what year did you say it was, Paul?
Oh, it was the first part of the best.
Yeah, so that was what,
1722 on they issued them.
Yeah.
So it was definitely of the right type. So it was this part here, this brass trigger guard, and it was bent, suggesting damage. But you could tell even between the first and second patterns of these muskets, you know, they had slightly different castings, shapes, and so you could tell it was of the right pattern for having been part of the skirmish at Highbridge.
Yeah, so basically it was actually, there's a wee building down there that you can just make out. And the trigger guard was right in the centre of the building. So we pulled that out of the ground there, immediately spoke to Paul, and he identified it right in the time frame with the Highbridge skirmish, well it could have been. But I don't know if you know about it, Paul, but we've actually, 𝕳𝖎𝖌𝖍𝖇𝖗𝖎 comes down here, you can clearly see it coming down there, and that's obviously where the troops came. But we've actually found a tomback button over there as well, and I personally think it's the Royal Scots emblem that's on the tomback button. That's down at the National Museum of Scotland at the moment, getting looked at. But where that was found is quite a bit off Wade Road, and there's a flat patch there, so that's somewhere I think needs a bit more of a look at as well. But two tomback buttons come out of there, but one of them has got the Royal Scots emblem on it. So that's another part that's kind of spread a wee bit away, but it could have been from troops maybe stopping there. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. That's amazing.
The button's broken as well. The button's damaged. The button's almost cut in half.
Wow.
You can make the emblem out, and when we researched it, it was red coat government issue emblem on the front of it. So that's another find that I don't know if you're aware of, but that's something that we hope to get confirmed. Aye, yeah, it's been there for a while, so we haven't heard back. Yeah, but I mean between the musket balls that Paul's found, and then the trigger guard, and then that button, you know, who knows what else is going to come up down here.
I think that tells part of the story, because we're far enough away from the bridge here. You're clearly out of sight of the bridge, and this would be what you call a safe harbour, basically, to regroup, you know, and to reorganise, because there was men wounded and men killed, you know, and clearly the Jacobites weren't for talking, and you still didn't know how many there were. So the order's given to retreat, but you've got to reorganise along the way in doing that, and this looks like the kind of ground where you do that too.
I will leave a link below for Paul Macdonald Armouries for anyone who's interested in the fabulous work he does. I'll also drop a link for the West Highland Museum, a museum where I feel you can really get a feeling for everything Jacobite, with lots of pieces also related to the Bonnie Prince himself. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and leave a comment. It really helps the channel grow. I would like to thank everyone individually who's donated to the coffee page. It really helps me get that little bit further. You can also join me on Facebook and Instagram of the same name, Exploring Scotland's History. So until next time, thanks for watching.